Welcome back to World Affairs in Context, everyone. Let's talk about one of the most consequential moves in the world of global economics today, the $7.5 trillion shift that could crush U.S. markets, and we will discuss the role of the BRICS bloc in this. What if one of the biggest capital shifts in modern history was already underway and hardly anyone is noticing it? Behind the never-ending, quiet, meaningless, mainstream media headlines, a quiet financial revolution is gathering speed, while the West, still very much tangled up in its own exceptionalism, prefers to ignore it. Asian nations, led by the powerful and growing BRICS alliance, are pulling away from U.S. Treasury bonds. The numbers are indeed staggering. Over $7.5 trillion in American assets could be on the move as we speak. And if this trend continues, it could very well shake the foundations of the global economy. Let's get straight to the facts. In just the first few months of 2024, China actually sold off $150 billion worth of U.S. Treasury bonds, and it continues to sell billions of dollars in U.S. Treasury bonds in Q1 and in Q2 of this year. But this isn't just about China, of course. It is a coordinated shift. And what's very important to understand is that it is a shift that is the result of U.S. policies. The shift is a self-inflicted wound. The shift is a reaction to decades of economic coercion, such as the IMF giving out loans and forcing emerging countries to implement detrimental domestic policies, among many other things, that ultimately made the global majority realize that the World Bank and the IMF have transformed into an extension of U.S. foreign policy. And this is just one of many, many examples. Now, the goal of the global majority is to reduce exposure to the US dollar, a currency that, despite its global dominance, is starting to look increasingly risky. It's not just the global majority or the global south, of course, that's seeking to de-risk away from the US dollar. Global investors in general are fleeing dollar-denominated assets, such as treasuries. This is precisely why the U.S. Treasury's auction is actually attracting fewer and fewer buyers. Instead, these countries are moving toward safe haven assets, seen as a more stable store of value. So why are these countries making such a bold move now? Well, first, U.S. debt is about to hit $37 trillion. Yes, trillion with a T. That's raising serious red flags all around the world about long-term financial stability, of course, as the cost of servicing that debt surpasses $1 trillion with a T, of course, per year. The second reason is this: geopolitical tensions are rising. From trade wars to sanctions, many countries, especially emerging economies, are no longer comfortable depending on the US financial system. They see that not only is the United States unwilling to broker peace in the Middle East and in Ukraine, it actively sells arms to belligerent states to continue the bloodshed. The United States is therefore a co-belligerent in at least two ongoing conflicts, and that cannot go unnoticed by the global majority that seeks cooperation, not war. And third, as the result of the reasons that I just mentioned, we're witnessing a decline in confidence in the dollar as a stable reserve currency. Nations are looking for sovereignty and alternatives. The use of the US dollar has proven to be a major risk to a nation's economic sovereignty, and now that the BRICS bloc is moving forward with an alternative financial system, the US dollar is no longer the only game in town. For decades, the system was simple. Asian countries exported goods to the United States, they earned dollars, and then they reinvested those dollars into US debt, especially treasury bonds, because they are backed by the full faith of the US government. It was a cycle that kept global trade running quite smoothly. But now, that model is breaking down. This isn't just economic tinkering, of course, it is a paradigm shift. a break from the post-World War II order, where the US dollar was the undisputable king. Well, now the world sees that the king has no clothes. If the BRICS bloc and other Asian nations really do pull out all $7.5 trillion worth from US assets, what happens next? That is a great question to ask now. Well, most likely, the United States could lose its status as the world's safe haven of capital. What does it mean for those of us who are in the United States? That should be the next question we're asking. Well, it means higher interest rates, a further weakening dollar, and greater difficulty funding America's growing debt. It's a ticking time bomb, in other words. It would hit everything from government programs to consumer borrowing. And you could ask here, well, what about the financial influence the US has long enjoyed? What about that? Well, that could vanish too. This isn't just about leaving US treasuries. It's about building something completely new. And BRICS nations have already discussed creating alternative reserve currencies, possibly even digital ones backed by commodities, possibly gold. And although that does not appear to be a viable or politically appropriate path right now, nobody is going to create a currency, one single currency, that is going to be backed by commodities due to a variety of risks associated with that. But nobody knows what tomorrow might bring. In an interview to Bloomberg, one of the chief investment officers put it quite simply. We are witnessing, she said, a change in the world order, and we're not going back. In other words, this is not temporary, it is a lasting evolution, and this is just the beginning. Right now, many still see the United States dollar as too big to fail. But if confidence erodes further, and notice, I'm not saying if confidence begins to erode, I'm saying if it continues to erode further, even slowly, the consequences are enormous. Think about it. A $7.5 trillion unwinding is not a maybe, it has already started. And if it accelerates, the financial dominance of the United States could become a thing of the past very quickly. The dollar hasn't lost its crown yet, but the writing may already be on the wall. The global economy is changing quite fast, and the question is, are we watching the beginning of the end of the dollar itself? Do you think that the United States can stop this shift, or is it too late? Leave me a comment below. I would love to hear from you. Let me know what you think. Please remember to show your support. It goes a long way. Like, subscribe, and share. It really means a lot to me. I put a lot of work into the content here on my channel. And make sure that you are subscribed to worldaffairsandcontext.com. It is my Substack. I would love to see you there. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you back here tomorrow. Bye for now.